Welcome back. It's Tim and Julie Harris, and this is day 2. And today's topic, yesterday's topics as well, is why you did not get the listing, the top 10 mistakes to avoid. And remember, if you want all of our notes, which I know you do, make sure you go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe to our daily newsletter. And the newsletter is free. It costs you nothing, free. It takes 2 seconds for you to sign up. All you've got to do is drop in your email. And remember, pop over to your own email and double opt in, confirm that you want the subscription. And then you get all of our notes from all of our podcasts. In addition to that, you get a lot of unique content that Julie and I enjoy creating for all of you. So Julie, without any further delay, let's pick up right where we left off yesterday at point number 6. And remember, point number 6 is a fantastic point. Points 6 through 10 are amazing. But, oh, we have bonus points. Whoo, I didn't know about that,
If we
Julie.
get to them, we don't have to.
But if you didn't listen to the first 5 points, points 6 through 10 aren't going to be nearly as good as points 6. If you didn't listen to yesterday's and didn't listen through 1 through 5, points 6 through 10 aren't going to make as much sense. So make sure you go back to yesterday and listen to the show. All right, Julie, let's roll on to point number 6.
All right, point number 6, you relied on a canned presentation. Generic slide decks scream laziness. Instead, ask what the seller values most and tailor your pitch to their needs. Here's the secret. Showing that you've listened builds trust faster than any pre-packaged spiel that you could come up with. What is the seller's motivation? What is their time frame? What are their priorities? Speak to those things versus assuming that everybody wants the same thing. Now, there are certain things that you do in every presentation. You talk about price, marketing, you close, you handle objections. That's all true. But the meat of your presentation, the things that the seller cares about, if you don't ask them, and most of our points have to do with using the seller's pre-qualification script. If you don't know what's important to them, then you're making some assumptions and it could absolutely sink your appointment and you end up not getting the listing just because you didn't ask what was important to them.
Let me tell them the story. All right, so true story. Hold on, I got to get a yellow tablet as a prop. All right, so I'm going on. This sounds like a silly thing to complain about, but it's true. Julie and I had gotten to the point where we're so efficient at lead generation, and some days we were going on 2 and 3 listing appointments. Julie would generally stick to those centers of influence and past client listing appointments. And then I would go on the ones that didn't necessarily have a relationship with us already. So I was going on for some weeks in a row, 2 and 3 appointments a day. Not all of them were like in the same neighborhood. So it's exhausting. It's ridiculous because you have to, you have to perform every single time. And it requires a high level of energy and enthusiasm. And eventually, even though I was in my 20s, you eventually start to get a little burned out on all that listing appointing. Okay. So I had this fancy listing appointment. It was in this 3-ring binder and it talked about Remax. It talked about the international this, and it talked about relocation that. But we had just started using our pre-listing pack, and our pre-listing pack that we were using back then wasn't anywhere near as good as the one you guys get with Premier Coaching, like not even comparable. But what I was realizing was that in most cases, when I was on these listing appointments, the sellers weren't really necessarily paying attention. They weren't really engaged. And sometimes even though the pre-listing pack would do a lot of the pre-selling for me prior to getting to the listing appointment, there were still a lot of questions that remained unanswered. And so I remember it was at the end of this long day. It was like on a Friday. I probably wasn't even in the greatest of moods. And I had my presentation. I had all my cat and monkey show ready to go. And I didn't want to do it. I just was burned out. And this was a perfect listing, great motivated sellers. Everything was done correctly. I just had lost some of my mojo. So I asked the seller, I pulled out a yellow tablet of paper and I pulled out a red Sharpie pen. And I said, Mr. Seller, so listen, I could sit here and, talk to you for the next 2 hours or 3 hours, or as long as you like, about what I can do to get the property sold. But I've sent the pre-listing pack, and you have an idea of what I know. You reviewed it, and so you know what we're going to do to get the property sold. Just like we have hundreds of other properties, and if you personally, listener, haven't sold hundreds of other properties, we sold hundreds of other properties could be your brokerage. All right, so don't rule out what I'm saying just because. And so here's what I've discovered. Generally speaking, at the time I'm sitting across from most sellers, their decision to list with me or not list with me comes down to me answering maybe 1 or 2, sometimes 3 questions that they might have. And so what are those 1 or 2 or 3 questions that you might have for me? Or if you don't have any questions and you just like to get the paperwork out of the way, we can do that as well. And then just shut up. That was it. And let me finish, Jules. And so you just shut up. And then you have your yellow tablet of paper, and then you have a red Sharpie pen that's sitting right there on the yellow tablet of paper. This is called in our listing process. This is, by the way, your listing presentation. you say this is the Sharpie close, because the listing presentation, what you're going to do to get the property sold, was already presented to them prior to getting there with the pre-listing pack. And so if they do have any issues, let's say there's issues that were explained, answered in the pre-listing pack, but maybe they just didn't review it or didn't read it or just whatever, you need to write them down. So the first thing they're going to say is, I want to, and this is almost always what the sellers will say. They want to know, like, and sometimes you have to translate what they're saying. So they'll say, like, I want to know exactly what I'm going to be, it'll be a money question, right? I want to know exactly what I'm going to be walking away from because I need to have so much money to buy my new house, or just some complexity of it. And so you're going to write down net to me, okay? Net to me being the seller. So net to me being, Mr. Seller. All right. So I'm writing that one down. That's number one, net to me. Okay. Are we on the same page? Yes. All right. So then, are there any other issues that you're really focused on? Because, I know you've reviewed the pre-listing pack. Well, I want to know what you're going to do to get the property sold. Okay, great. I get it. I appreciate that. Marketing plan. Are there any other issues that you might have for me? Well, yes, I'd like to know what you're going to do to communicate with me on a regular basis. Perfect. I appreciate that. Communication plan or communication guarantee is what I'd write down. So, Mr. Seller, just so that I'm clear, after I answer all three of these, objections or questions that you might have, and there are no other questions that pop in your mind, and there's, again, there's nothing else, no other reasons why you wouldn't want to move forward with me tonight for you hiring me as for the job of being your listing agent. Once I've satisfied the issues that we have in front of us, and there's nothing else moving forward, would you be able to move forward with me this evening? And about 50% of the time, they're going to say yes. Other time, they're going to say, we'll see. Doesn't matter. If they say no, you're going to say, okay, well, that's interesting. May I ask why? And then they might say, well, we're going to pray on it. Or they might say, well, we're waiting on this, we're waiting on that. Whatever they say with the no becomes another objection that you're probably going to have to overcome. Or frankly, it's something you should have rooted out of them when you were setting the appointment in the first place, when you were setting the appointment, when you're pre-qualifying them. So then you're going to go to the pre-listing pack, the actual pre-listing pack that you sent to them ahead of time. And you're saying, Mr. Seller, do you have the pre-listing pack I sent to you ahead of time? They're going to find the folder. They're going to open it up, and then you're going to pull out the pages. And okay, the first thing is, and you do these, you overcome these objections in any order that you want. Always do the pricing one. Anything to do with numbers, do that one last. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to overcome their concern about communication. All right, perfect, Mr. Seller. So here's what we're going to do. Then you're going to pull out the page in the communications that says communications guarantee, that's exclusive to the Premier Coaching Program. And it says specifically what you're going to be doing to communicate with them. And it's based on how they want to be communicated with. So would you prefer me to message you, prefer you to call you, emails, message you on text, message you on Instagram? How do you want to be communicated with? And then they'll tell you and say, Mr. Seller, this is my communications guarantee. And this is what it says right here. I will guarantee, and you can read it to them, and they can see it. Nobody else that you're competing against is going to have a communications guarantee. It's going to be like with the one we've created and evolved over the last 20 years. And so then here's what's important. And this is where most agents screw it up. So now the communications guarantee, how are you going to communicate with me, is on your three things. It was on your yellow tablet of paper. So Mr. Seller, do you have any other questions for me about how I'm going to communicate with you while we have the property listed for you? And they're going to say no. And then you got to take that red Sharpie pen and you got to scratch off communications. You got to scratch it off the list. They have to visually see that's no longer a question that remains unanswered in their mind. Boom, bye-bye. Okay, then you're going to go on to the next one. And the next one's going to be marketing plan. And then you're going to pull from the pre-listing pack the marketing plan. You might there's a marketing plan, and then there's, what you're going to be, all the things. There's 3 different pages in the pre-listing pack that pertains to what you're going to do to get the property sold. Pull those pages out, show them to the seller. You don't have to read every darn little detail point, but you can show it to them and explain to them, this is what I'm going to do to get your property sold. And this is work when we are selling, or I have sold hundreds of other homes in your particular marketplace. And this marketing plan has proven itself to work in all market conditions, no matter who the president is, what the interest rates are, those types of things. Follow our scripts that we give you in Premier Coaching. Do you have any questions about my marketing plan? I'm fast forwarding here, but that's the gist of it. Let them, review it. Remember, they probably already have seen these pages because you delivered the pre-listing pack prior to you getting there. So now they're seeing those pages. So Mr. Seller, do you have any other questions for me about what I'm going to be doing to get the property sold, about my marketing plan? And they're going to say no. or they might have more questions. It doesn't matter. Now, what you're listening for is when they've talked to other agents, you want to find out if the other agent would have maybe sprinkled, fairy dust on them about something else they were doing. And it might have to do with internet marketing or relocation, but you have to ask them, are there any other questions that you have with regards to what we're going to do to the property, get the property sold? And is this, this is definitely the marketing plan you were looking for. Wouldn't you agree? If they say anything other than yes, you have to say, well, that's interesting. What else were you looking for? And then they're going to tell you about what some prior agent that you are competing against may have said about relocation. And then you need to pull out your relocation page from the pre-listing pack, and you need to just show them what you're doing as far as relocation, right? So then the last thing is going to be the price. Now, it was net to me, right? So what you're going to do, again, this is already in the pre-listing pack, is you're going to pull out the net sheet that you did for them that's showing the 3 different scenarios of how the house might sell. And so, Mr. Seller, when it comes to pricing properties, and especially a fantastic property like yours, you always got to love their house, guys. Never have anything bad to say about it. Always got to love it. So generally speaking, Mr. Seller, there's 3 strategies to go about for pricing. We can price it at the very, very tip top of the market. We could price it, at essentially what the market is telling us, what the buyer's expectation is, or we can price it below market. Now, depending on what your motivation is and depending on what the feedback is, that'll determine where the house should be priced. And now, just so you understand, agents, let's say this is an 800s house. 775 would be it'll sell in 24 hours price. 850 means it might need a price reduction. You guys getting the whole idea here? And let the seller choose. The seller is always going to choose 850. If the seller is motivated and they have a time frame, then you say what I showed you guys yesterday is, Mr. Seller, listen, I appreciate that. So let's go ahead. It's a fantastic property. I can understand why you feel your property is worth more than what the market's telling us. Remember, it's not your CMA. It's not my CMA. Don't use ego, personal pronouns. And no, this is not a woke thing. This is just a reality thing. You don't want to make the seller ever feel like it's you against them. And then they'll say, well, let's go ahead and price it at 849 or whatever the price is. And you say, okay, that's fantastic. But let's agree that after 2 weeks or 10 showings, if we don't have a written verified property offer on the property, they'll reposition it so we reflect the buyer's expectations. And then the net sheet is going to show them the different scenarios of where the property is going to sell based on the actual sale price. 850, this is your net. 800, this is your net. 775, this is your net. And maybe maybe the actual list price or the correct price is 835, not 800, or you guys get the idea? That also overcomes, now if they have any issue with your commission, you could say, Mr. Seller, I'm so glad you asked about my commission. I really appreciate it. That's a really important question. Repeat and affirm what they say. Don't make them feel adversarial to you. And if this is an objection they pull out, well, I see here you've got in the net sheet, whatever your commission is, 5%, 6%, 7%, 20%, whatever it's on your net sheet. And they're going to say, well, I see you've got 7% on my, as for commission. And on our net sheets, what we show you to do is break the commission out. So it's not just 7%. That's just a glaring, go after commission to the sellers. You want to break it out. So let's just keep it at 6%. So it's 6%, 3% goes to the listing broker, 3% goes to the buying broker. And then you want to break it out even further so they can see 3% or 1.5% goes to the listing broker, 1.5% goes to the listing agent, and on the buyer side, show them the exact thing. So they can actually see how commission breakdowns actually work in real life traditionally. You can just use a 50-50 split and again, we show you how to do this in Premier Coaching. And then they're going to see and understand where the commission goes. Because if you don't do it that way, all they're going to see is the big number. Never just give it to them in 6% number, because they're obviously going to go after that. It's going to trigger them. And then they might say, and some of them will, this is an $800,000 house and it's a 6% commission. And I appreciate the fact that you're showing me where the commission goes. And I understand that everyone works hard for the money nowadays and whatever. But you're still telling me that you're going to charge me almost $50,000 to get this property sold. And you're going to just say, Mr. Seller, listen, if I were in your position, I would completely and totally agree with you. And I understand your position on this. But let me ask you a question. What matters more? How much money you make from the sale of this property, Mr. Seller, or how much money I make from the sale of this property? I mean, I'm sure you'll agree that it doesn't matter really what my commission is, as long as the check I hand you at closing meets or exceeds your expectations, correct? See what I've done there? And then they're going to say yes, and then you're going to show them what the net is. So, Mr. Seller, if we sell this property for, say, $835, this is your net. And you told me when we were pre-qualifying, remember, guys, follow our system, that you needed, $400,000 to buy your next property. Well, this selling it at $835 is going to net you over $400,000. So that accomplishes your goal. See what I've done? We made it so the commission, what you're charging, is not the focal point. If you have sellers that really want to, some sellers will, but not all of them will. Especially if you sent the pre-listing pack and you sent all the numbers ahead of time, they're not going to want to do battle with you. They're not going to even want to bring it up. They're just going to say, I saw the net sheet. I appreciate it. And then let's go ahead and shoot for the stars, shoot for the moon, and price it at $849. And you're going to agree with them. Okay, fine. But let's agree that after 2 weeks or 10 showings, if you don't have a written verified offer on the property, that will reposition on the market to correctly reflect the buyer's expectations. Now, I know I just fired hosed all you guys, but I want you to understand, I personally have not done a listing presentation in a long time, but I have it so ingrained into my brain. I could go on one right now and be lethal. And you guys can get to that point as well. Because listing appointments, in my opinion, and a lot of others too, is the most fun thing to do when in selling real estate, because it does require skill and it is competitive and it's so fun to win, especially against an agent in a marketplace. Like Julie's smiling because she remembers too, especially in a marketplace where you have some Betty Bebop and Bob Bebop who've been there forever, drive around in their fancy
Assumptive
car.
types.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The sort of it's my business and what are you doing in my market? When you start beating those folks, I'm telling you that is the best, sweetest feeling, because what you're doing is you're giving the sellers what they want, which is alternatives. And Mr. Seller, listen, I want you to remember, when you list your property with Julie and I, if for any reason you're not 100% satisfied with the services that I'm providing, I'm sure you read in our pre-listing pack that you have our easy exit listing, which means that you can fire us at any time. But do you realize when you list with Bob or Betty, they're going to have you sign a listing contract that's all one-sided, 6 months, 12 months listing contract. And it's going to specifically state that you cannot fire them. So all they have to do really is give you the best cat and monkey show here now. And then you sign that contract and they could never communicate with you again. They could never do an open house. They could just essentially, they got the contract signed. If that property transfers while the listing contract is valid, you're going to owe them a commission. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me either. And also, I didn't talk about the flexible fee commission plan and all the other things. Point is when you use our system, we are going to remove all the risk, all the chance of whether you will or won't get that listing. It's a complete proven system that you will be thrilled about when you have the opportunity to present to sellers, just like I am thrilled to present to all of you right now. Sorry, Julie.
It's okay. Now, I'm going to fast forward to the next related point, because the reason that you were going through all of that and using your yellow pad and writing down what's most important to the sellers, those are their objections. You visually cross out, mentally, visually, no more objection. It's gone. One of the mistakes that agents make in listing presentations is not moving on after they handle the objection. You're visually crossing it out.
Let me finish that.
Number two, number three. And that leads to point number 9, which is remembering to close.
But okay, so let me finish that because you just brought something up and you're right. I got to talking about the other things. So Julie just said it. So after you have overcome the 3 things that they said, cross all 3 things out with a red Sharpie pen, cross all 3 of them out, and then put the tablet down and, even turn around, have this, the seller see it and say, look, looks like we've answered all your questions. Let's get the paperwork knocked out so I can get started on getting your home sold starting this evening, and just shut up.
Or when would you like your first showing?
Exactly. When would you like, is it okay I start bringing folks through the next couple of days, or do you want to wait a week? And you know what they'll do? They'll just look around a little bit and they'll go, well, if you could wait to this weekend, and that's it. That's your whole damn close.
Textbook. Nearly every time when you follow the system, the close becomes a breeze. This is one of the things, again, that agents live in fear of because they wait for the objections to come to the end. They don't ask. You see how all of these things are tied together. I think you did a great job tying them all together. Okay. Now, you have to remember to ask, what's the most important thing to the seller, right? If you just do the canned presentation, you assume that it's just like everybody else, you could be completely missing the game. And there are different nuances. This seller needs to move in 30 days or they have some kind of financial hardship. This seller doesn't really feel like it doesn't really matter if it sells now or next month, or next year. So how you handle that is very different in how you close. But the close is the logical ending to a great presentation. Some of you don't close. You walk out the door. I'll follow up because closing was difficult. You either didn't do it at all because you were afraid to close, or your ask led to conflict because now you're in objection hell. Okay. And that makes it uncomfortable to close. When you follow the system and you ask what's important to them and you visually cross it off and you say what Tim said, looks like all we need to do now is a little bit of paperwork. When would you like your first showing? Or where should I put the lockbox? I have this basket so we don't wreck your front door. Let's go ahead and find a place on the front porch for your lockbox. They always do exactly what Tim just said. Oh, well, I need like 3 days to clean the house up. Let's walk around. You can give me some staging ideas. You're done. The plane has been landed. The close is no longer scary. It really does go that smoothly.
So next mistake a lot of folks make is, obviously the first one, point number 6 was using a canned presentation. The next one kind of speaks for itself. You showed up late. That's just dumb rookie mistake number, 1 practically. But I'll tell you what dumb rookie mistake number 1 truly is. It's when you get a listing lead, not calling them back right away,
Right.
and actually setting the appointment and pre-qualifying them, sitting on them. Again, you guys and your follow our coaching program, you stay in coaching long enough, you stay in real estate long enough, you're going to start hearing sellers say, I listed with you just because you called me back right away. I listed with you just because you showed up 10 minutes early. You'll hear that.
Interesting stat, Tim, from RedX that I read last week. They said that the conversion ratio of an expired lead is 407% more likely to give you an appointment if they're called in the first 5 minutes that you find out about them.
You mean
5 minutes?
Call it when this expired is fresh?
Yes, 5 minutes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and there's been other studies that I've read that it's like in the thousandths of percentages when you either answer the phone in the first place or call them back immediately. Even if you don't answer exactly what they're calling about, that communication quickly is key because leads don't get better with age. They're going to call somebody else. They're going to screw around online for the next half hour. You need to be there when they have their questions.
Point number 8, your pre-listing package was weak or non-existent. That's a big focus of our coaching program. And the pre-listing package that we've created for all of you when you join Premier Coaching is branded with ethical real estate professionals. So when you join Premier Coaching, you're also going to become if you join as a VIP, or you can just go through the system, but you're going to become a ethical real estate professional. If you want to know what that's all about, just go to ethicalrealestateprofessional.com, or you can frankly go to premiercoaching.com and scroll down on the page, and you're going to see what the pre-listing pack looks like. You're going to see what the ethical real estate professional branding and logo looks like. When we made ethical real estate professional, we did it because we wanted you guys to have the ultimate brand in your marketplace. Ethical real estate professional is a limited edition brand. We're only going to allow 2,500 agents to ever join ethical real estate professional. So that's your way forward right there, is just to join ethical real estate professional. The pre-listing pack, everything we've talked about is already done for you. Obviously you add in your personal information, your stats and the rest of it, but the heavy lifting, and I promise you, it was heavy lifting, is done for you. All you've got to do is plug into the system. All right. Point number 9, you didn't close. We just talked about that. Right. Closing, anybody who, has this book of closing and all the rest of it, you got to remember psychology is really the most important thing when talking with a seller. Sellers hardly ever negotiate. Sellers are like, what are the things that cause folks the most stress in life? Birth, death, relocation, selling a house, buying a house, all those types of things, right? So you're involved with somebody in their life when they could have multiple, most stressful things happening at the same time. The house could be for sale because they're having to deal with some, personal life changes, or just all the things. And so your job when you're dealing with these sellers is not to cause more stress in their house. When you deliver the pre-listing pack, when you give them the CMA ahead of time, when you give them the listing presentation, the whole thing ahead of time so they can see it and you've already answered all their questions, they're going to be grateful that when you show up, it's not going to be for them to do battle with you, for you to, overcome their objections. They're going to be grateful that you've answered their question about the commission, the communications guarantee, the easy exit listing,
Yeah,
the
you're the
marketing
solution,
plan.
not the problem.
Right. And that's going to be a different vibe you're going to have that your fellow competing agents won't have, because of the fact that, you already did the heavy lift and ahead of time with the pre-listing pack, and the closing is just the Sharpie close. That's what we call it. It's in Premier Coaching. It's not any more complicated than that. Write down what they say, overcome every one of those objections, cross them out as you go, then say, let's knock the paperwork out. That's the whole close. It's
Easy peasy.
It is peasy. I'm laughing because there's so many videos on YouTube and books and all this other crap about how to close. And it's all this manipulative NLP mirroring and matching stuff. And none of it's necessary if you follow our listing process. All right, Julie, point number 10, you overdid pre-qualifying and talked about yourself.
Talked yourself out of it in some way.
Yeah.
Now we talked about, you addressed if they come in, if their price, like practically every seller ever is going to have a higher price than you do. You're using comps. They think their house is better. That's normal, but don't just assume that they're crazy. Maybe they've got a reason. As you said earlier, if they have a good level of motivation, you should take the listing and have a game plan. The other way that agents will talk themselves out of listing, especially the lower skilled agents that are nervous anyway, They'll try and do the 7-step process, and they'll call to confirm. That's one of the steps. And if the seller doesn't confirm, then they don't go. Okay. You should show up anyway, because the seller was probably at work. They're not checking their voicemail. They're not texting you back. They're not on WhatsApp. They're not checking Facebook Messenger, however you tried to confirm. Don't assume. The worst case scenario is they're late, they're not home, and you have to reschedule. But don't just not show up because they didn't confirm.
I'm going to go a step further. And I know it's part of our listing process to confirm the appointment, but I have to say that probably it's not necessary, because if they've set the appointment already, they're driving home, they're running a little bit late, they've got whatever stressor that's causing them to not feel, the greatest, and you call to confirm, they're going to say no. And then they're going to move the appointment, and that's going to screw up the whole process.
Talking yourself out of it again. Yeah.
Well, essentially. So personally, I wouldn't call and confirm. I would you got the appointment, you said it 2 days ago. It's either, it was at 5:30. You show up at 5:30.
Well, assuming that you did the pre-qualification and they gave you the time of day and you've got their answers, that should be enough to show that they're motivated.
Totally.
And if for some way your lines got crossed, then you can just reschedule or start your appointment half an hour late. It's fine.
Right. Exactly. But show up at their house when you said you were going to show up at their house, or ideally 10 minutes early. Don't park in the driveway, park in the street if it's a residential home, and just follow our process. I hope that you guys don't feel fire hosed from today's podcast because I did give you a lot of information about scripts. I hope what you felt was excited, because I'm confident, because it's our proprietary copywritten information. You haven't heard this any other place other than Julie and I. What is really important you understand is that you can master all this. Well, you don't even have to master it. If like say a level 10 is mastery and level 1 is where some of you are right now, because this is the first time you've been exposed to what truly it means to be an absolute home run hitter listing agent. If you only get to a 6 or 7 in our system, you're going to be so much better than all the other 1s and 2s in your marketplace, because most of the other agents in your marketplace will never get past maybe a 3. So if you're already operating at 100% more efficiency than they are, because you're pre-qualifying, because you know who you're competing against, because you know what they think the property is worth, because you know their ultimate motivation, because you're setting a pre-listing pack, because you're sending a net sheet ahead of time, the listing paperwork ahead of time, all the things that we teach you in Premier Coaching. When you just follow our system, I don't care if you just got your real estate license, you're going to dominate listing appointments. And you're thinking, as a new listing agent, you might be thinking, well, why are they going to list with me? Because I'm a new listing agent. People list with new agents all the damn time, especially when they show up as professionals. So if you show up, you're brand new, but you show up as a 6 or a 7 because you're using our system, and the seasoned veteran agents are only operating at a 2 or a 3. They show up late, they got a little bit of lunch still on their shirt. They don't have a pre-listing pack, the whole thing. You're going to win because you had a more professional presentation.
Because you were more careful and more prepared. Yes. Let me give you a real quick coaching example of this. Okay. Coaching client of ours lives in Los Angeles. She was door knocking her own neighborhood. This was back during the holidays. She was door knocking with the wrapping paper project. We talked about that on other podcasts and in Premier. So it was her neighborhood, but she doesn't know everybody in this big neighborhood. So she got this listing lead because of her door knocking with the wrapping paper project. Okay. It was not center of influence in her neighborhood, but not really a tight center of influence. It was not, a digital lead or anything like that. It was sheer, just flat out door knocking. She did all of the pre-qualification questions. And in the process, if we think about yesterday, not knowing if you're competing, I think that was point number 2. She finds out that she's not competing against 2 or 3 agents. This seller was talking to 6. Then she goes on, who has the time, right? But that was important to them.
But here's the thing. Let me interrupt you. Just sorry. Sure. Mr. Seller, 6 agents. Wow. That might be my new record that I've ever heard before.
Right.
I'm curious, what are you hoping to learn from interviewing all 6 of those agents, and then shut up and listen to what they say?
That's exactly right. She also asked, that's interesting. How did you arrive at those agents that you're speaking with? Now, here's where it gets interesting. She found out that one of her competitors was a very big name, grizzled veteran, broker, big team, lots of advertising. Everybody knows his name. She almost didn't go to the appointment. To our previous point we were just talking about, almost canceled her own appointment because it was just too much to deal with. It wasn't just competing against 2 or 3 agents. It was also this big name agent, right? Of course, following the system, she took the listing. I asked her about this on a coaching call. That's interesting. That was really stiff competition. Why do you think you won this time, considering you almost canceled it? She said, well, I was so proud of myself that I had the guts to ask the seller that question when I was walking around getting ready for the home brochure, taking the pictures, all the things.
Which
And you know
we
what they
want,
said?
which we teach you to do in Premier Coaching, by the way. You always want to know, especially when you win, why they chose to list with you. What'd
Yeah,
they say?
it's very interesting. The seller said, even though you didn't give us the highest price, you were the only one who asked us what was important to us. And that was important. And that was our decision-making process. You didn't give us the highest price, but you're the only one who asked us what's important about getting our process and getting us on our way. That really resonated with us. And I was
This
just
is
so proud of her because it was so textbook.
No, it is. Guys, listen, why leave it to chance? And so those of you who I've never worked with sellers before, or most of the people I work with that are sellers are my past clients.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're about to get a call from a referral from somebody that you have no real relationship with, and you're going to be the one that's competing against 6 other agents. And this is the best listing ever that would for sure set
Right.
yourself up for the rest of the year with a bunch of other listing leads and buyer, just the best house ever to have for sale with your name in the front. And you don't have a process. You don't have a system. And you're just going to show up because you're Susie special Susie, and you're going to wow them with your personality and they got a golden retriever, you got a golden retriever. Now, that doesn't work in a marketplace like this. You're not going to fake friend them. You're not going to fake bond them. They're going to list with somebody. Now, if they have a bunch of, other low skilled agents that they're trying to compete against, yeah, they might choose you, Susie, because you have the best personality. But if you're competing against someone that has a good personality and has our presentation and our system, you're going to lose. And that's what's happening in the marketplace. That's the bifurcation that's happening in real estate right now. Bifurcation is things, obviously splitting. So you're seeing the agents that have the skill set versus the agents that don't. And the agents that have the skill set are the ones that have the sales presentation, have the scripts, know what to say, are absolutely positive on how to handle themselves professionally. Whereas these over here, they're the ones that are just will come types. If it happens, it happens. And they're also the ones that have been trying to buy their business, doing marketing and branding and advertising, and have never really worked on their skills. They're the ones that these agents are going to be competing against quite often. And these agents are always going to win against these agents. Nobody cares how many Instagram followers you have. Maybe they did 15 years ago, but they don't now. What they care is that you care about what's the most important to them. So I know which coaching client you're talking about, Miss Hermes, right?
In her neighborhood. Yeah. Different coaching client, but same idea. Yeah.
Okay, good.
She's on the ascension. She's going to be the next one to do this. But final thought on this, Tim, and I think you'll agree with this, is so interesting to see coaching clients with their aha moments where it works, like the story I just told, and like our up and coming Hermes girl in LA as well. When it works and they're like, oh my gosh, that appointment just went like so much easier. Closing was easier. I walked away with the listing. I didn't think I could get that one. Then here's what's interesting that happens. Now, all of a sudden, they feel like generating more leads.
Oh yeah. Listing
because
leads.
their confidence is there.
Yeah. Then they're calling every expired. Then they're calling every for sale by owner.
Like they can't wait to be on the phone longer.
Well, that is cool. I mean, when you have your pre-listing pack done and you're competitive, not just competitive, but you actually can win, you want nothing more than more signs in people's yards. That is when it's when you pivot and you become a true real estate professional. Because
that's also when it becomes more fun.
Exactly. And winning is fun, right? Look, guys, the bottom line is there's no leverage in working with buyers. You are the leverage. You are giving away too much time and too much effort if you just want to be a buyer's agent. And this whole focus on being a buyer's agent is because there's so many agents that have come into the marketplace since about 2008 who the first thing they've been told by other people is just go buy buyer leads. You don't, just everyone starts out with, but they've always said that that's the industry. You work out with buyers, and when those buyers basically become sellers, you get your first listing. You don't have to wait for that, gravy train to pull up in front of your train station. You can actually go after sellers the second you get your license. Julie and I did, we, in our early 20s, our first full year in real estate, we sold over 100 homes, and at least 50 of those were listings. And what did we do? Exactly what we're telling you to do now. But we had no
our first transaction was a listing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Carl, who we're still friends with. All right. In the meantime, you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you for keeping this the #1 listen to daily podcast for real estate agents in at least the United States. Obviously, please like and subscribe and all the rest of it. If you've got any show ideas or anything that you think would inspire us to, present information.
Special requests.
Thank you. Just message us over on Instagram. We are always here to serve. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.